able to see the comments yourself. Otherwise, I'll keep reading them out to you, lovely.
Cool.
We're live.
Yeah, perfect.
We're good to go. How are you? Hello, Maeve. We were just having a little bit of chit chat. That's what that was all about as we were going live. Are you good, darling?
I'm really good. How are you?
So I've just had a massive delivery of riding boots, which lots of my customers are going to be over the moon to hear. Ooh. Because during lockdown, of course, things like riding boots became very scarce because they're all generally flown in, shipped in, and this, that, and the other. So my poor customers coming in with like boots and chaps that were virtually taped up, and I'd just be going, I'm really sorry, just hang on in there. So we just had 3 mahoosive boxes delivered, and to say I'm a little bit like hot and flustered, it's actually a real treat just to go, oh, I've got to go and sit down now and talk to Maeve for an hour or whatever. So that is how my morning's going. What have you been up to?
I'm off today, so I have dropped the kids at a football camp, raced up to the yard, took the horse's rug off, chucked them out in the field, raced to the cash and carry, did all the shopping, raced around the hill with the dogs and raced back.
Well, you said you were going to try and juggle stuff for me, you absolute Wonder Woman. So thank you so much. Because of course it's the start. Well, it's summer holidays for you and me and our kids, isn't it? Not that necessarily means a huge amount after the fact we've had them for the past 8 years.
Yeah, it feels like it.
So
eternity.
Work with me. Oh God, it is an eternity. Mine are here in work with me because Ash has had to go up to London for a meeting at lunchtime. So they've come in and I'm like, nice as pie 1 minute, and then I just found Ed in my box of shredded paper. So of course he thought it was really comfy to sit in, and then he stood up, and I'm just like, you're cleaning that up. You're cleaning up every single shred of paper that you take with you. To be fair, he was like, okay, those wasn't it? Now, I'm so pleased to have you back on, because you noticed as well as I did when I was doing the live with Jackie on Sunday night, why do so many of us not understand the importance of breathing well anymore, Maeve? What is going on? I'd have thought that we'd all be finely tuned to things like that with people like you at our fingertips. But you said an amazing statistic. Something like 90% of riders that you see don't use their diaphragm properly or don't breathe properly.
Yeah, at least. I'm probably being kind. There's very few actually that I assess that do. Maybe the ones that played a lot of woodwind instruments when they were young or did a lot of trained singing can access it, and some with martial art background, but generally the rest, which is most of them, no. And that's including the top guys that I deal with as well as the amateurs.
And how do you diagnose somebody, or how would you know that when I'm not breathing correctly, let's say? Can you tell just by looking at me? Can you observe me?
Sometimes. So but it's my job, so I watch people a lot. Not in a bad way, but sometimes when they sometimes when they walk in and you just see all the neck muscles almost slightly bulging and they're so tense, I instantly can tell that they don't breathe properly, because you can see how much they use up here to do all of the breathing work for them. So you can see where their shoulders are here, and just, you can see a kind of sinewy neck almost where they're just overworking, and you can tell that for a long time probably they haven't been able to breathe using the diaphragm, because that takes a bit of time to get that movement pattern there.
And so what do you suggest? Can we do something now that we could establish how well we are using our diaphragm? Yeah. What could we all do?
So if they come in for an assessment, and I would normally do it lying because it's easier and gravity helps a bit, but we can do it sitting. So I would always do this with every single rider, and every single time they come, not just the first time. So I would get them to show me belly breath, basically. So I'd get them to put their thumb on their belly button and their hand underneath, shoulders nice and relaxed, sitting up reasonably tall, but not bolt upright. And then just see if they can breathe in through their nose and allow their tummy to expand under their hand, and then blow out. And what you want to see is, less up here. So not too
Yeah.
much happening up here. So not a big, so this stays nice and relaxed and just the belly moves. So they breathe in and out. And they find sometimes they find that they can access it a little bit, but there's still a lot happening up here.
Right.
And sometimes you find that they can't, and they might go the opposite of what you're telling them. So it takes a bit of training.
I have to really concentrate on breathing down in my belly.
Yeah, that's probably because you've had a delivery of riding boots and you've been running around all morning like a loony, which doesn't help. And you've got the kids at work.
Yeah, I'm surprised I didn't start.
And it would be like this.
Hello. But so thumb in my belly button, in through the nose.
Yeah, so in through the nose, and you want to feel. So we'll just do this as a test, and then I'll do what I would call a diaphragm reset with you. So just do this as a test. So thumbs on your belly button, hands underneath, shoulders nice and relaxed, sitting up reasonably tall, and then breathe in and allow the tummy to expand and try and keep the shoulders nice and relaxed, and then blow out. And you should feel the hand go back in as the tummy flattens. And then, so then what I would do to release the diaphragm is I would think of an upside down Y. So here and here. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And then I just use pads of my fingers, and I find just the edge of the ribs.
Yeah.
And I work in there. So I just rub basically. And some bits are quite nippy. So I work my way up along the edges of the ribs, and then I get into this nice little crease in here, just below your sternum. Now, usually that bit's nippy because we do this a lot.
Just there it is.
Yeah. Or if you've been doing loads of abs exercises, that bit's really nippy.
I did barbell this morning, so that's it.
There you go. So into that bit, spend a wee minute or two. So I would maybe spend 2-3 minutes on somebody doing this. It's not always the most pleasant thing I do to them.
No.
And then I would come right up onto the sternum, and I would work my way up their sternum. So you kind of have to get in under your bra a bit. Then I'm working my way right up. And you'll find sometimes it feels a bit gritty or a bit stuck, and some bits are really sensitive. And you've just got to keep working away in them. And I go right the way up to the top of the sternum. And then when I reach the very top, I come out just under the edge of the collarbone. And they're usually quite nippy little bits there as well. So I might spend a few minutes. And usually I'll get riders to do this themselves as well at home. They can do it lying in bed before they go to sleep, and then they practice their breathing. Or it's great if you're tuned into this and you've done it a lot with me. Then say you're about to go in and do your dressage test and you feel, and I do this myself because I get the fear, especially before the show jumping, then I'll just do a little knuckle rub on my sternum just to think, oh yeah, breathe. And that's sometimes enough to trigger it. So I don't have to do the full thing because I do it quite regularly, and the riders I work with will do it quite regularly, but they can just do a quick, oh yeah, and remind themselves. And so then once they've spent a few minutes doing that, and got rid of all the nasty bits, then we go back to thumbs on your belly button, hands underneath, shoulders nice and relaxed, and then just do the same thing again. So big deep breath in through the nose, and then blow out.
That is so much easier already.
Yeah, it should feel a bit different. Usually does.
It just doesn't feel as, for me, my breathing could be a bit like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm like,
But
now smoother. I'm like, And do so
that's a really good tune in. And then if that, you can kind of add on little kind of, I suppose, little mental tricks with it as well. So I might get them to suck, especially if they've smoked in the past or something like this. But basically you just want to suck in, and sometimes that's enough to kick the diaphragm, and then blow out. And that's a good one. And the other one is there's a little acupuncture point, which is basically right along the top of your skull. You just drop off the end and you almost drop into a little hollow. Yeah. I put a bit of finger pressure there. Same thing, into the belly and out. Sometimes that works. Some of these wee tips work with different people, so you can, I can try them. And if they don't work, fine, we'll try something else. And the other one that sometimes works, which is a bit weird looking, is to go down the bridge of your nose until you reach the end of the bone. So you're in the cartilage, you kind of flatten your nose. It's not very attractive looking. You look like a rugby player. But basically, slight pressure, so you flatten it, and then same thing, in, and then out. And it almost just widens the nostrils slightly, so you get more air in. But it's not the most flattering one. I maybe wouldn't do that while I'm warming up.
We're amongst friends. We're amongst friends. I feel this one. Definitely.
Yeah,
we're getting more air.
That works really nicely sometimes.
I'm going to just read you some comments. Oh my God, that's harder than it looks. I reckon that's Gem. I reckon that's Gemma Kent. Yeah, it is harder than it looks. Ginny Joy's put, are we all doing this right now? Yeah, I'm still holding my nose. I hope so, because I am. Oh, Alison, my belly goes out so far, I look pregnant. So does mine. But that's a good, yeah, I was going to say that is a good thing. Gemma Kent, me too. My husband is looking very strangely at me, Emma Berry.
Make him do it.
Get Ash to do it. Jackie has to dig deep under the bra. Oh God, I'm always close to tears when Maeve does this in a session. Oh, is that good
I know.
or bad?
Sometimes it's nippy. Who said that?
I reckon it's Gemma again, because I can just see Facebook user, and I reckon it's Gemma Kent again. But if it's not, tell me who you are. Jane Hayden, I'm sitting in a car park doing this, but this is it.
That's good, Jane. You can do it anywhere.
Yeah. And hello, Jane Brindley. Hello to you, gorgeous. I'm glad you've joined us. Emma's keeping the nose one. Yeah, I like the nose.
Does she like the look?
So, yeah, I love that. But God, there's something really good about that, Maeve.
It's really effective, and I think it just releases the diaphragm, but it brings your awareness to it as well and allows that belly breath to happen. And then, if that doesn't work with people when they're on the table, I can do other things, but usually that's enough to allow them to start to think about using their diaphragm. And sometimes it's difficult because some people maybe haven't breathed properly for years and years, especially these ones that come in with the really obviously tight necks. And so sometimes you have to start small with them and just allow them to get that feeling, and then they can work with that themselves and show them how to do it, and then they can go off and do it themselves and practice it. But all of the riders I assess and treat get sent home with the homework of 20 big diaphragmatic breaths before they go to sleep at night. So they're lying in bed on their backs, nice and relaxed. If they need to, they can do the little release, and then they thumbs on their belly button, hands underneath, and they do the 20 deep breaths. And if they fall asleep when they're doing it, well, that's a bonus.
And is it always 20? Build it up.
I usually aim for about 20 because that's enough to. So Jackie will talk about this better than me, but you have two nervous systems: your sympathetic nervous system and your parasympathetic nervous system. So your sympathetic nervous system is our fight and flight response. So any stress, we're triggered into that. We're on it. We're either going to fight the tiger or we're going to run away from it. Whereas the parasympathetic is our rest and digest nervous system. And so really when we go to sleep, we want to be trying to drop ourselves down that parasympathetic ladder. And this is a really nice way of just getting your whole body and your whole system to drop down into that. So it's a nice one to do at night before you go to sleep, and it just sets you up for a good night's sleep. But also it's really worth practicing, because if you find it really difficult to do lying down in your bed when everything's quiet and settled, then there's no way when you're waiting to go in to do your dressage test or waiting to go in to do your show jumping that you're going to be breathing properly.
Yeah. And this was what's Stuart picked up on when we were just doing our demo, because she was giving us a little quick discussion on competition preparation and breathing. It just, I mean, between you, Jackie, and Sarah, I'm amazed that we're just like, I'm just going to make it my mission, along with you and the other two, for everyone just to really focus on our breathing.
Because we never think about it, because obviously you're breathing enough to stay alive, so that's good. But we never, people are always surprised when that's the first thing I do with them when they come in for a rider assessment. They're like, but I'm here about my dodgy left hand, or I'm like, but we need to look at this first. This is kind of the key. And once they get it and feel the difference, then they're on board, because it makes an amazing difference. And sometimes if they're really, really stuck and haven't been breathing properly for years, then I have had people have an emotional release with me where they burst into tears, which is always slightly concerning, but they know that it's not, because, well, sometimes what I do is painful, but that's not what's making them cry. But it's that release of emotion that's obviously being stored and stored here, because our body works in such mysterious ways that sometimes we don't relate all these things together till it happens, and then they're like, oh wow, I didn't realize that's where I had stored everything.
I completely agree, and I should think Jackie as well probably sees a lot of emotional release as well, things like that. But God, as you just said, I'm sure it's a little bit concerning, but what a wonderful thing for people just to relax and let go and let it out. Literally, look at me.
And you get some that laugh as well, because that's their release, is to go into almost hysterical laughter, because that's how they release emotion. And it's just different people, different things, and some don't. I mean, most don't, but obviously it's a bit tender and then they feel the difference. But you do get some weird and wonderful things that happen, which is great because it keeps it interesting.
I'd definitely cry on you, my love, but I cry when I'm happy. I cry when I laugh a lot. I cry when I'm angry. So I probably would definitely be a crier for you. Jane has put, it's so important that riders practice all these things when they're relaxed and not under pressure, so they then use them when they most need them.
Totally, because you can't tap into something that's not there already. So unless it's established and you've practiced it, and it takes maybe 2-3 minutes to do at night before you go to sleep, and also set you up for a nice sleep, but then it makes it easier to tap into. And so then I might get them to say they do it a bit when they're in the car or when they're sitting at their work desk. They just take a wee minute and think about it, because otherwise you go back into this position, and then they can start to do it on the horse. So that when they first get on, they just check in with themselves, do a couple of breaths, and then do a little pelvis movement that I get them to do as well. That's on my page from yesterday, but they might get them to do that, but I'll get them to do a couple of breaths as well. And then particularly if they're stressed or anxious or about to go and compete, sometimes just a little must remember, and then okay, I'm ready to go.
Alison has just written straight away, I get very nervous when competing, so my breath gets stuck high up in my chest and neck, so I'll have to try the pokey technique in the warm-up.
Try the pokey technique at home as well before the warm-up. But definitely once you get used to it, it's really quick and easy and just a good reminder. And then, I mean, you need to be able to access the breathing properly. You can't get through, a 5-minute dressage test if you're virtually hyperventilating, or even to get around a course of jumps. By the time you're coming to the last, if you're not breathing properly, no matter how fit you've tried to get yourself, if you can't access that breath, it's going to be really tricky. And it has an effect on your concentration and on your strength levels, on everything in your body. So it's really important.
Emma's put, a little off topic, but I struggle to breathe when riding in strong winds, especially fast work. So much so I have what seems like panic attacks. Any tips? I've tried covering mouth and nose, but then I feel smothered.
Yeah, I was going to say, I wonder if you tried something. I don't know, actually, if you tried. I'll have to have a think.
Yeah, I mean, you two know, don't you? But I actually do know what Emma means, because
I know what you mean as well.
That is
hard. Even if you're walking into high wind, then that is hard. I think the more that you practice in a normal setting, then the easier it might be to access it. But it's always probably going to be that the pressure of that high wind is going to make it harder to access the breath. Breathing through your nose is really important as well. Breathing in through your nose rather than mouth breathing. Begin just because that's what the nose is designed for, that it filters all the air, but also you can get a deeper breath from that. So it might be that maybe she turns to mouth breathing as she does faster work, and that becomes more difficult when something's in your face.
Claire's recommended Emma try singing. Do you ever recommend things like that when people
or counting?
Okay.
Singing or counting, or I know my trainer gets me to count when I'm jumping. If I just have to count to 4 basically over and over and over and over and over again, but that really works. It works for people who cheat and fix through their jaw, which a lot of people do. If you watch them as they go over a jump or as they get stressed, so it works for that. So yeah, singing or even just speaking, anything.
Oh, she tried it. It didn't work. Okay, Emma, we're all going to put our thinking hats on for you. I mean, mine would be, don't ride in strong winds. That would be... But that is not useful to you, is it, my gorgeous friend? That is like me saying, I just won't open the shop in strong winds. So, oh, bless you. Someone, again, Facebook user. Now, I just have to explain, we're not actually on Facebook. So that's why sometimes I can't see who's speaking. So I know all you lot can see it, but one Facebook user has put, I've been close to tears with those fingers in the diaphragm.
They're not revealing themselves.
I can log on to Facebook on my phone to double check, but I'm going to say that's probably somebody that you know. Jane has put, I think I need a one-to-one session with Maeve, and Eden has agreed and gone, when are you going on tour?
I'm not even treating people in Scotland yet, because we're not in phase 4 yet, so I'm still only treating horses at the minute. I haven't treated any riders until we move into phase 4 and things get a bit calmer up here. Because at the minute all of the PPE restrictions are so strict, and I would have to ventilate the treatment room for 20 minutes in between every client, so it just makes it a bit trickier.
I'm just starting it on my phone, just so if I can see who it was that said that you basically can't see. Anyway,
it's for their own good,
Jackie, Jackie has put, I think in response to Emma, that sounds more like a behaviour establishment with the
could be like a panic, maybe Jackie's the one you need.
Yeah, it's Jodie. Thanks, Jodie. Sorry, lovely. There you are, Jodie Neal. So, yeah, breathing. I mean, we've literally just done nearly 25 minutes of breathing. But as I said to you, I think it's so super important that people do these things. And again, like Jane says, when we are relaxed and we know what to look for and what to feel. I love listening to sleep stories before I go to sleep of a night. So I've got this wonderful app called Calm, and there's a whole multitude of things on there, from like meditation to music, and it can be funky music to work to, relaxing music, but they do sleep stories. But I'm going to do my sleep stories, and I'm going to start doing
do your breathing.
My breathing. But tell me, so I have like a sensitive spot here at the moment. When you hit a sensitive spot, do you rub it for longer, or do you move on? What would you?
No, I would get in and work away. If you were on the table, I would work into that sensitive spot. You're never going to do it to yourself as hard as somebody's going to do it, to you, but because your brain's going to preserve you. So you can work away into it, but usually a sensitive spot means that something is stuck a little bit, bound down, or just needs to be released a little bit more. So it's worth working into. If it gets really painful, give it a break, come back to it the next day, and then just work on that breathing. And really, really we want, like one of your followers said, that they almost look pregnant. That's great. You want that belly expansion. You've got to embrace that. Forget about this sucking your tummy in, because if you try it now, just pull your tummy in, even, you know, like they say in Pilates, 30%. Just try it now. Try and belly breathe. And it's virtually impossible, and it feels horrible once you've accessed that lovely diaphragmatic breath. To then block it just makes it feel horrible.
Yeah.
So you want to really focus on that. Yeah. And your diaphragm is a muscle, so it's a muscle underneath your lungs, so we've got to train it like any other muscle. But by doing this, pulling the belly button in, you just block it instantly. And so it's really, I would really encourage people not to do that, because if you can access your diaphragm and if you can breathe properly, you're automatically, your shoulders will come up and relax down. You don't have to do this pulling your tummy in, forcing your shoulders back and holding yourself rigid, because on a horse that's never going to work. You can't absorb the horse's movement when you're so rigid in your own body, and then you're just going to bounce basically. And so yeah, that's the key thing, is almost flipping people's brains out of this need to pull their tummy in all the time, and getting them to instead focus on the breathing and then focus on the pelvis movement. And that, for me, they're the fundamentals.
Now, just to go and down and talk about the pelvis, you and I also stumbled across something many months ago now, of when you said people need to change their stirrup leathers.
Oh,
and
yeah.
We literally just had people going, no, never changed my stirrup leathers. So all the people that are following us now, how many of you swap your stirrup leathers over what, once a week, Maeve? What would you say?
Once a week or once every 2 weeks, depends how much you're riding. And actually, to be fair, I think there are certain brands that maybe don't overstretch and certain brands that do. So I just get them to hold them up and check them against each other, and some are fine. But it's interesting because sometimes you find quite a significant difference between them.
It's one of those things that I always, I was taught in Pony Club basically, was that, you know, you need to check your stirrup leathers. But I think it's one of those things, like you've said, because of more sophisticated materials. But I would love to know, Eden's gone, no, even after you telling us, terrible, I know. But like Maeve's just said, people can be riding with a difference of like that much, can't they? So
yeah.
I mean, you tell us the impact of that.
Yeah, well, then you're all constantly adjusting the pressure within the seat bones. And so you will, so say if you're being thrown off to the left side, you have to tilt your body to keep yourself on board, which means fixing down with one arm, which means, you know, one rein is going to be quite significantly different to the other rein.
Again, I can remember my instructors before the start of every Pony Club rally or anything, standing and looking in front of every rider and just making sure that they were there. But again, I just don't know if that happens any longer.
No, I don't know, actually. It's amazing how many people do ride with one, like deliberately, one stirrup shorter than the other, thinking that they're helping themselves. But I would actually get them to stop doing that immediately. I think it was Russell Guire, the Centre Biomechanics guy, just did a study on it. So even, I think they changed it by two inches. I'll need to check that. I can't remember the exact difference, but it had a massive, and then they obviously had the pressure pad analysis on the horse, and it made an enormous difference to rider position and to the way that the horse moved. So I would much rather work on improving people's pelvis control and having even stirrup leathers. So, and the only time you would want a difference in your stirrup leathers is if you have a true leg length discrepancy. So you truly have one leg longer than the other and you need a shoe to compensate that. You know, you have a built up shoe to compensate. Everybody will have a slight leg length discrepancy of some kind, but it's normally very small, and you can manage with it. But if you need a true raise on your one shoe, then you can change your stirrup length because you want your seat bones to be level. But the vast majority of people, by changing one stirrup leather, will change how the pressure is through their seat bone, which changes what your upper body does, which changes what your horse feels, which changes how your horse moves.
So Alison's put, do you swap them because of mounting on one side, or is it uneven riding? And then
both,
she goes on to say, she goes, you can't really tell properly if they're uneven just from looking at the front of the horse.
So I would take them off the saddle and then just hold them up. And you can tell by that.
Yeah. Yeah,
and then
exactly.
swap them around. I mean, I don't clean my tack very often, but I do swap my stirrups quite regularly.
I think it's just one of those things. And why, for those riders out there, if you don't really remember it, why you don't really think about doing it either. It's not a criticism, is it? But I made me giggle how many people were like, oh my God, no, I don't swap my leathers over. Eden has put, my position has improved so much from Activate Your Seat. I don't want to show off too much, clutching at straws here. But Eden, that's amazing.
That's fab.
Shout out about it. I love it. And now, of course, Emma Berry is the ride judge, and she's put, the amount of times I get on someone's saddle and their stirrups are so unlevel, but I don't know. Right, I'm going to just let you, I've just got to go let my alarm man in, because he's come just to check my service. But so I'm just carry on talking to us about stirrup leathers or whatever you want to chat about, if that's all right. I won't be a moment.
So and that's interesting what you said, Emma, that when you get on, that you notice that difference. And so to me, that would signify that people are riding with uneven pressure through their seat bones, and that in turn will definitely have an effect on their horse. I do a little assessment of pelvic movement when I look at how a rider moves, and so I get them to sit in a stool shaped like a saddle, and I get them to roll their pelvis back and then roll their pelvis forward to see how that feels, and then I get them to take their weight onto one seat bone and to do the same thing. And what I'm looking for is a restriction in movement or a difficulty doing it, and then I get them to do it the other way. And so often you'll find that one side people have a slight restriction, and the other side they might collapse off. And so that tells me a lot about what they're doing, what pressure they're putting through their seat bones, and then what I want to target with them once I go on to treat them, and then what exercises that I will give to them. But that's really why I developed these exercises of Activate Your Seat, because I can get them to be more symmetrical through the seat bones, and that's really key to everything, to get that full pelvic movement and then control of that, which is the most important thing. So the ability to control that pelvis through movement, in the middle symmetrically, and also on each seat bone, so that when you give a seat aid, that you can control the rest of your body. Sorry, you left me on my own, and then I just waffled.
Sorry, my alarm company service it, and you know what it's like when they're, will be with you at some point, and I'm like, never. I knew it would happen.
Yeah, guaranteed.
Alison repairs leatherwork, and it's amazing how much the length on stirrup leathers differ in the pairs. Yeah, I mean, I can believe it, Alison. I can believe it. Yeah. Sorry, Caitlin lost the sound, but I think it might just be you, Caitlin, because I think everybody else, I can hear everybody, I can hear you crystal clear. Is there anything else that you see quite commonly with the riders that we can look at, again, at home, things like that, like you were just doing with us with the breathing exercises?
Yeah, so for me, most positional faults in the saddle come back to three main issues with their rider's seat. So their ability to control the movement of the pelvis back and forward. And so that ability to move in the what we call the sagittal plane. So that comes down to their diaphragm, their psoas, which are your main hip flexor muscles, and your glute max, your big bum muscle. And so whether that they can do that enough and have enough range and enough control of that range, and sometimes they might find it more difficult on one side compared to the other. And that can have a multitude of lead to a multitude of issues within the saddle. So they might tip forward. Usually that will be a problem within that plane of movement, or a chair seat, a swinging lower leg, unstable hands, that kind of thing, all relate back to this ability to control the pelvis through range. Then the next kind of positional fault that I would relate everything back to is their ability to control their movement within the lateral plane, so the side-to-side movement. So their ability to take their weight onto one seat bone and control that movement, and the same on the other side without collapsing. And that's to do with all of the muscles that make up your lateral sling, which is your glute med, gluteus medius, one of your glute muscles, which is on the outside of your bum, on one side, and then the opposite quadratus lumborum, which is a little lower back muscle that attaches from the bottom of your rib cage to the top of your pelvis. And they work together so that when you walk and take a step, that when your weight is on your left leg and you put your left foot down, that your other hip doesn't drop down, so that they call it a Trendelenburg gait. But basically, it's so that when you walk, your pelvis stays level. Your lateral sling muscles control that. And so on the horse, when you go to take more weight onto one seat bone to give a leg aid or to turn or to do whatever movement that you're about to do, you need good control of that lateral sling both ways so that you're even with your weight aid when you ask that. And so on a rider with an issue with their lateral sling, you might see that they want to ride with uneven stirrups, or that they find it really difficult to put their leg on, to put one leg on, but they're fine with the other leg, that kind of thing. Or they really fix down with one hand because they lack the control on the opposite side of their pelvis, so they need this fixing to keep them on. So that would be the other kind of main issue I would see. And then the third one is an issue within the rotational plane, so the transverse plane, so the ability to turn their body. And that's to do with your oblique slings. So you have a front oblique sling, which is your hip adductor muscles, the ones down the inside of your thigh, and then your oblique abdominals, the ones that we would do sideways sit-ups and things to target. And then on the back of us, that is your glute max on one side, and it crosses right across your sacroiliac joint and comes up into your latissimus dorsi, which is a big back muscle on the opposite side. And so with riders that might have an issue with those, it would be ones that find it really difficult to turn their body one way. So they're fine, maybe turning to the left, but turning to the right would be really tricky. Or they drop a shoulder, that kind of thing. They fix again, a fixing with one hand, or turned out toes sometimes is really common with riders, and that can be to do with that sling and also the lateral sling. And so basically that's why I developed Activate Your Seat, because I target these three issues with their seat with the exercises that I've developed, because for me pretty much every positional fault that I see comes back to one of these three issues, and some riders might have issues in all three of these movement planes, or some might only have in one, some might have it in two. And when I assess them, I think it's because I've spent years assessing them, and it always comes back to these things. And when I looked online at what was available, everything was so fixated by abdominal work, and really nobody was targeting these slings of muscles that are so important to a rider, and really targeting the seat and really recognizing these issues. And so that's why I developed it, because I was just getting a bit frustrated with what was available to my clients when they went home and they wanted to work on things. Then there was nothing really there. So that, yeah, so everything pretty much comes back to, for me, comes back to these three fundamentals with your seat, and this ability to control your seat and your pelvis through these three planes of movement.
Yeah,
sorry,
and when
went on a bit of a rant.
No, that was amazing. Because again, I bet all of us have been sat at home like this, and Claire's just put, "Oh my God, I'm broken," so I can only like do everything that you're saying. Emma put, "I know I don't sit on my right pelvic bone on the left rein, so I'll practice those." Caitlin's just ordered her bungee. Woohoo! Can't wait.
I think I just posted it this morning, Caitlin.
Oh, and she's put swinging lower leg and tipping forward. That's me.
Yeah, so swinging lower leg's really common, and sometimes that's because what we want to do is lead with the hips, so that we want the movement, the hips to be the target of the movement, and the movement to originate from the hips. And if it doesn't, so say over a jump that you don't fold from the hip, you fold from the lower back, then your lower leg's going to flick out. And same even on the flat work, if you're not able to use the hips and absorb the movement, then you have that swinging, unstable lower leg. That's really common as well.
Alison wants to know, are you doing any online one-to-one sessions? Is that possible, or do you need to be hands-on?
It probably would be possible if I had time, but at the minute,
Oh, yeah.
I don't have any time. I've been asked this quite a few times this week, actually. I'm kind of waiting to see what happens with the schools going back, and the horsework is so busy at the minute, and everything else. But yeah, I mean, I would love to. I write loads of articles and I do loads of self-help videos on my pages, because a lot of these things you can just use those. And I've had people message me and say they've had amazing results with just doing those couple of wee short activation videos that I've put online, and then using their bungee, and you know, they've discovered weird and wonderful things about their body, and they've been able to improve that. So one lady that wrote me a review last week, it said that it just all clicked with her, and she was able to then use those activation videos to get the weight even through the seat bones, and then use the bungee and strengthen herself, and she's had really good results.
Amazing, amazing. I mean, I reckon everybody on here has probably got the bungee or should get the bungee, because it is just a fabulous bit of kit. And I mean, you've only got to remember Jackie doing it with the music blasting. It's
Jackie sent me another video. I must put it up. Actually, sent me a video of them all doing it on holidays. It was brilliant.
No, Alison's just read my mind, actually. So for all of us that have got bungees and could like tap into something like this, because I think we can have like up to 10 people on this, or I'm sure you've probably got Zoom. If you ever did have time, could you give us all a live lesson? Those of us that have got our bungees?
I could. I'm sure we could do that.
That would be amazing.
We could get Jackie to lead it with some music.
Yes, why not? If she's still here, she'll have a comment for that. Otherwise, I'll message her. But Alison, I think that's a genius idea. So we'll carry on being really nice to Maeve. If anybody wants a bungee but hasn't got one yet, get
just
one.
Pray that the Scottish schools go back soon, and then I'll have more time.
When do your children go back?
Well, they're supposed to go back on the 12th of August, and I think we hear at the end of this week whether they're going back full time or 1 day a week or something ridiculous.
Yeah. Right, everyone's saying yes. Everyone's like, Jackie's in. Jackie's in. Beth has put yes, a Zoom bungee class with music and wine.
Oh, even better.
Caitlin, so excited to get going. The squats will do me good as well. The group session would be awesome. Jackie's putting a playlist together. I'm in. Yeah, well, look, we won't put any more pressure on Maeve today, other than
I think when we're allowed to travel, I need to come down to your shop and we'll do it in there.
That would absolutely be incredible. I'd be up for that. No problem. Now, if anybody's got any more questions before we let Maeve go for the day, then speak now or forever hold your peace. Emma is probably the only person who doesn't own one. Get buying, Emma. Ash will buy you one. Don't worry about it. A happy wife is a happy life. But if you've got any questions, speak now whilst we've got the lovely Maeve, because I know how busy she is, bless her. So,
well, I've got a flat work lesson on my horsey, so I need to go and do my bungee now.
Oh, love you. Well, I think everyone's still very excited about having you in person or a Zoom. People still want you on tour. So when you are allowed, you've got some destination points to hit. No, I think we're all right for questions. Well, we'll let you go and get ready for your lesson. Thank you. As ever, I'm sorry I had to leave you for a minute. That's there, okay. But thank you so much. I love talking to you. We all love talking to you, gorgeous lady. You're so
thank
fabulous.
You for having me. And yeah, you can all practice
always
diaphragm resets and do your breathing. And then when you're sitting ready, when you and Jackie are going to do your dressage tests, I'll see you doing this before you go in. Sorted.
I'm done. I'm doing that. I do that whenever I get nervous. Trust me. Thank you so much, lovely. I'll say goodbye, and thanks to everybody for joining in, and we'll see you all soon. Bye, lovely.